All right. So, should you start a private practice? I mean, I remember thinking through this when I was a 1099 contractor and I had officially filed my LLC. So I was my own business, but I didn't have my own private practice. I was working at Child and Family Psychological Services in Kalamazoo, Michigan with Dr. Larry Beer. Larry's been on the show a number of times. He's a mega group practice owner. Now he's sold that. I ran into him at Costco when I was in Kalamazoo for a minute, and it was awesome. Caught up for a couple minutes when we were in Costco of what's going on. He told me he had sold the practice. I told him I had uncoupled. So it was a lot of big things in our life that were going on. And so Larry really for me set the stage of what could be. And I modeled a lot of my early practice off of what he did in regards to 1099 contractors, in regards to splits, in regards to contracts, and even some of the paperwork to just be able to say, should I even do this? And when I started my practice, it really was a side gig thing. I had moved back to Traverse City, Michigan, northern Michigan. I had a full time job as a foster care supervisor and eventually worked at the community college. And I just wanted to pay off student loan debt. And so at the time, all of the insurance panels were closed. And so I started a practice that was private pay purely out of need. Now, I think there's a lot of different ways to think through this. And we're going to talk through the different elements when you're thinking about starting a practice. But first is, what type of private practice do you want? And so, really, like defining your lifestyle, defining your goals should be right at the beginning. There's lots of ways to make money. But if we start with what are you actually trying to do through this business for yourself, for your family? To me, that's more important and helps you then define what you value within your practice. So let's talk about the types of practices and then how you can figure out which kind of lifestyle and goals you would want to align with those types. So the first type would be a part-time side gig practice when you have a full-time job. And so you have a full-time job or maybe a three-quarters time job, and you want to put in 5, maybe 10 hours a week into this side gig practice. Now, that may be what you want to do forever. It may just be, all right, we're going to just give this a whirl forever. Or it may be eventually I might like to leave that full time job. I want to kind of open opportunities here. I want to think through if that's something that I might want to do, but I'm not ready to commit to it yet. So one of the advantages of starting a practice when you have a full time job is that you can take huge risks because your basic living expenses are already covered. And so for me, by having a full time job, I could be private pay. I could also raise my rates at a rate that a lot of people weren't charging. I remember hearing that there were some PhD psychologists that were bashing me saying, who does Joe Sanok think he is charging $200 an hour? He doesn't even have a PhD. I didn't care. I mean, sure, it's weird to have people talking behind your back about stuff. And that's probably more of a reflection of where they were at than anything I was doing. But I could raise my rates and say, you know what? I only want a handful of clients. These are the exact types of clients I want. I'm going to specialize in that area. And then also, I took foster kids in my counseling practice all the way through. The state would only pay $53 per session. And to me, it was important to serve the community and especially these kids who had got shortchanged. I didn't want them to just have therapists that could really just like needed $52 a session. I wanted to be able to give back in that way. And also, there was a single moms group that I offered parenting and free talks through. So when you're making this extra money, you can then choose to donate your time or take reduced costs in other areas. It doesn't mean that you're just eliminating all these people from having access to you. So that first type is just a side gig, part-time practice. Second type is a part-time practice that you want to grow full-time. So you're starting from scratch. Maybe you don't have a full-time job or you have other contractual things and you're like, I just want to start a practice. I'm going to start really kind of like small and grow that into a part-time practice to supplement my income. And then we'll see. The other type is you want a full-time practice. You want to make this jump. You want to grow as fast as possible. Maybe you do have a full-time job right now, or maybe you've lost your job, or maybe you just quit your job, or you may have a partner that can cash flow your time so you can take bigger risks. So we have two types of part-times and then one full-time. Next, we want to look at what is that lifestyle that you want to live. So, what are the goals here? Is the goal to bring home a certain amount of money? Is it to pay down student loan debt? Is it to just make money for vacations for your family? That's going to define things much differently if you're starting a practice to just pay off student loan debt, where you're saying, If I make a couple $1,000 every few months, that's great. That's going to be one direction you're going to go, compared to if you know I need to create a full-time job for myself and, working full-time hours, making money, scaling potentially into a group practice. There's going to be different things that you set up from an infrastructure standpoint at the beginning when you start a practice. So, if you know, for example, that you eventually want to at least have the door stay open to a group practice, you'll want to have infrastructure that can really scale so that you're not starting something and only a year later undoing it and then redoing everything again. You want something that can scale with you. So, with your electronic health records, you want to make sure that that can scale and you can add clinicians to it. With your website, you might want to, right from the beginning, start saying us instead of me, or at least have that focus of, let's brand this as a practice. If you know you want a group practice eventually, you may not want to name the practice after your name. You may want to have a more generic name that is scalable to other people. So, starting to think about these things at the very beginning can be really important. Also, from a time standpoint, how many hours a week do you want to put into this? And so, maybe you drop your kids off at school at 9 a.m. and they're done with school around 4. And so, that's my kids' schedule. So, I know that I want to work 9:30 to 3:30, on the days that I work. I want to walk my kids to school. I want to walk down and pick them up. I want to talk with my neighbors. I want to be able to not be rushed. To me, those are very important values for how I run my business and run my life. I don't want to be a single dad that is hurrying to pick up my kids, to hurry to get them somewhere else, to hurry to get them somewhere else. To me, that's a lifestyle thing for myself, but it's also, what do I want for my children? Do I want them to feel rushed through their whole childhood and stressed and anxious? Or do I want them to be able to come home and, color for a while and play outside with sticks and, have a paced out life? To me, that's my value set. So I'm making sure that my business reflects that. And so if I were starting a private practice right now, I wouldn't see evening clients. I don't want my kids to not have their dad around. Or if I did see evening clients, they would be 3 to 4 times as much per hour than my during the day clients. And so there would be an incentive to not do that. And then hardly anyone would do it. But hey, if they're going to pay $700 a session, that might be something that I choose to do. Now, also with our lifestyle goals, we're going to want to look at things like, what are the expenses? So if you're going to have an office, if you're going to have higher speed internet, if you're going to have electronic health records like therapy notes, we want to know what's your basic fixed operating costs to just keep the doors open, or the virtual doors open. And then what are ones that fluctuate? So it may be that as you have more clients, there's certain things like a virtual assistant that it may go up as you have more client calls. So having some idea of a little bit of the numbers when you're starting out, thinking through that before you start a practice. And then a couple other things to think through is, do you want to be a cash pay practice, an insurance pay practice, or a mixed model? If you're going to do a mixed model, I would say you want to just pick, a couple insurances to be on, probably the ones that have the most people in your area. And you can just do a basic like Facebook survey to people in your area. Hey, those of you that live in Traverse City, I'm thinking about starting a counseling practice, wondering which of these insurances you have for your health insurance, or which one seems most common amongst your friends. So being able to understand that, and then figure out which ones pay the best. So if you're going to go on the cash pay side, most of your time is going to go into the image building, the niche marketing, finding people that are already cash pay. It's going to be a little bit more on the networking side, which we're going to talk about how to network in a couple of weeks. And then, if you're on the insurance side, you're going to want to have a lot more of your infrastructure built out. So having a biller right from the beginning that's taking 6 or 7% of collected money. You always want to have a biller that is paying on collected. If it's just per bill or per gross amount, there's no incentive for them to actually, make sure that it's collected. And so you may want to have that infrastructure built right from the beginning. Having a good electronic health records like therapy notes, having other things that are built in there that are automated, that can help save you a lot of time. So then once you do that, you're going to open your doors. You want to open your doors. And we'll talk about starting a website in the next Ask Joe. And then we'll talk about networking and marketing and all of that over the coming weeks. But, it's a big decision. It feels like at times to start a practice, but also it's not. Just opening your doors, setting up the basic HIPAA compliant, video, getting a website up there takes a little bit of time. but you really can test this out to see if you like it with very little startup costs and quite a bit of gain. I mean, the average cash pay person that we have in Next Level Practice in our membership community is usually starting at about $125 per session. And I would say the average probably is going to be 150 to 175. And a lot of insurances actually are raising their rates to compete with some of those cash pay rates. We're seeing more and more that 125 to 150 per session with insurance companies is more and more common, which is really exciting to see that insurance companies are paying for mental health services at a rate that seems fair for mental health clinicians. So it's a great opportunity. We also have support through Next Level Practice. Next Level Practice is our membership community that helps folks that are wanting to start and grow their solo practice. And you can read more of that over at practiceofthepractice.com/invite. Right now, we're on a wait list till our next cohort opens up. So you want to join that wait list, hang out there, and then when the cohort opens, pounce on that. Cohorts are so awesome, and you get put in small groups, get accountability partners, work with me in a small group setting to help you start and grow that solo practice.